Next, on PJ Radio's The Unconventionals.
I remember there was some website, I can't remember which one, that was doing some sort of bake-off survey about what note-taking memory application you use. And there was Evernote, and there was OneNote, and there was some other players, and there was Paper. And we came in second to Paper.
One of the most durable debates of the internet age is whether the web is good or bad for our brains. People like Nicholas Carr are on the cautionary side. As he wrote in The Shallows, when we start using the web as a substitute for personal memory, we risk emptying our minds of their riches. Then there are the optimists, people like Clive Thompson. In his book Smarter Than You Think, he says searching the internet is like consulting a super smart friend who lurks within our phones. So whatever side you come down on, no one argues about the challenge. We have more information than ever to keep track of, and our memories can't keep up. We need help. A lot of us, myself included, turn to tools like Evernote. Most productivity apps are used a few times and then they're discarded, but Evernote, at 100 million users and counting, continues to become a more useful tool for more people more of the time. In part, because Evernote resisted the pressure to become a focused application for a predetermined segment of people when they started. From the very beginning, they were trying to solve a big problem: how to use technology to help us remember. This is not a short-term or simple play. It was also not the kind of business model people were funding back in 2007. Today, we're talking to Evernote Chief Technology Officer Dave Engberg at Evernote's headquarters in Redwood City, California. We started by talking about the vision founder and CEO Phil Libin had at the beginning. Dave, welcome to the Unconventionals.
Thank you.
When you got to Evernote, what were you trying to build?
Well, Phil had a vision for building something that would let you remember everything in your life.
Modest.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that his initial vision was kind of different from what we ended up with. Like he was thinking that there might be some physical artifact you'd carry around, like an egg-shaped object that you might talk into or set on a table and have it watch things. I think he was.
I wish that was ever proprototyped, was it? That would be a
great
museum piece,
but
right?
I think he probably has something that he molded out of clay at one point or silly putty. And I think that as we got going, I think he might have been ahead of his time on wearables, but at the same time, we were at exactly the right time for the rise of smartphones. We got going in 2007. We launched our service in 2008 with a smartphone application for Windows Phone version 6.5, and that had a few thousand users. It was really negligible, but we just happened to be there and know how to build high quality native synchronizing applications from the very start. So when iPhone came out and allowed you to do native applications, we were there at launch. When Android came out, we were there at launch. And with any technology success, I think there's some part inspiration and some part perspiration, and then some part just right place, right time. And we were definitely right place, right time for mobile, the growth of mobile. And we happened to do a lot of things early that made it possible for us to be a successful application that wherever you are in your life, if you're in your car, if you're on a bus, if you're in front of a computer, you can remember things and you can access them later.
So your timing was right with mobile, but what was... If you take us back to 2007, what was getting funded then? What was everybody trying to do?
Right. So 2007, I went back and looked at there's a website called Mashable, and I was just doing a memory lane thing recently to give a little bit of a history of Evernote to some of our new employees, and I was looking at what the trends were, what the top stories were in 2007 on Mashable, and they had I think number one was the release of the iPhone. So Apple had released a phone that had a screen and lets you do web browsing and web-based applications. And Steve Jobs had declared, nobody needs a native application. Everything is web-based. So you just do a good web interface for iPhone, and that's it. there was a lot of things that were going on in sort of social media. Like everybody was chasing after how to be a social network. So Facebook had launched their platform. Google had launched Open Social. And the other major thing going on was advertising. Like people just had given up on trying to charge people for anything. So Google bought DoubleClick for billions of dollars, and those were the top trends going on. It was nobody builds native applications anymore. Everybody builds applications solely for social networks, and you only make money off of advertising.
And so what did Evernote – it's not exactly Evernote's strategy.
Yeah, we kind of decided to not do any of that, which made funding a real challenge in the early days. Like we said, you know what, let's build something that focuses on the 90% of your life where you're not bragging about your dog or your meal or your kids or your vacation, like the things that actually matter for you, the private part of your life, of the things that you want to remember for your sake. Let's focus on doing great native applications so that on everywhere you're using a computer, your data is ready. It's there. It's easy to use. It's accessible. It's fast. Like let's not limit ourselves to just the web, and let's try asking people to pay for it, like build something and have the end user pay for it instead of trying to make money through advertising. That was a pretty hard sell at that time.
So yes, take me through that as conversations with venture capitalists who, when you said, hey, this is a tool for remembering things and it's not going to be supported by advertising, it's going to be a native app. What were those conversations like?
It was pretty grim. 2007, you have to remember, was also when the entire economy was melting down. So you had all the Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and everything else going on. At the meantime, we're doing a completely contrarian application. I think the one advantage we had is that we did have some really cool technology. We could demonstrate some really cool things that an analyst or an investor could look at and say, you know what, I actually would kind of want to use that. So they might squint at our business model, but then when we'd show them like, okay, take a picture of a whiteboard. Okay, wait a minute. Now search for any of the words on that whiteboard on your phone. And it would find the note with that. The word that you'd handwritten would be highlighted. And like that was pretty magical. So I think a lot of folks got the application. They just thought we were kind of crazy with how we were packaging it, like hiring engineers for Windows native development, Mac native development, web, and maintaining all those platforms at a top tier level was extremely aggressive, extremely ambitious. We had to find really good people and we had to keep paying them. Whereas if you had done a web-only application, you just have to staff up a much smaller team.
Evernote was contrarian from the beginning. As Phil Libin has said, Evernote was the anti-social network when social networks were getting funded left and right. Funders didn't love the business model, and they certainly didn't like how Evernote described their target market. I asked Dave who they were making Evernote for.
Well, I guess the short answer would be pretty much everyone. Like we didn't really have a segmented market analysis where we were trying to target exactly like these four people. We kind of felt like we were building something that pretty much anyone who would have a computing device of some sort would find useful.
The typical way this stuff is done, I think, is it's positioning. You identify your segment.
Right.
And you say, this is going to be really good for small business owners or prosumers or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your mission was so much more open-ended. Did you have those targets in mind, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think because we were all technology people, we didn't start with a narrow market segment and try to optimize a product for that. We said, let's build something that we would want to use that is generally usable for lots of things so that it becomes a good place for lots of things you want to do in your life and just like keep getting better at that. As a result, we found pretty rapidly, like in the first few months, we started to realize that there were segments of people out there that were using Evernote and they were talking to each other about using Evernote, and they were very successful in ways that were completely different from each other. So we found out real early through support channels that we were popular among clergy. And like we did not build a liturgical data management application. We built something that you can put stuff in and clip stuff from the web.
I'm sure somebody would have funded you to do that, though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's always a long tail.
Exactly.
So why with clergy? What's that about? What was?
I think it was just they were managing different things. Like they would find things on the web. They would be typing in sermons. They would have information about events that were going on, and just like having one place to put all that and be able to search for keywords, and like it was just a better place than any vertical niche application would have been. Like even though it doesn't solve absolutely every problem they have, it was valuable enough to go to one place and have everything there. Lots of other cases of education, et cetera, more obvious cases. And the one market segment that we were extremely fortunate to be successful in, and we can't take too much credit for it, but in retrospect, it was like genius, was making an application that is personally extremely useful to tech journalists. Like if you had to get one market segment,
the people who write about you
exactly.
and spread the word, and
so we got a lot of really great PR in the early days by making something that was useful to the sort of people who write about technology, so that they didn't have to like reluctantly wade through a press release about something they're completely uninterested in. Instead, they have something that they use on a daily basis, and mentioning it in passing in their articles, or doing a review of this company that had 40 employees and virtually only a few 100,000 users at a very early stage was extremely key for us. So in the early days, we got a lot of really great PR, good general word of mouth, without building a social network with the social network virality, blah, blah, blah. We basically built something that was useful enough that someone would tell a friend that it was useful in everyday conversation, and eventually it got to a point that investors would take notice.
There must have been some tough moments there in the beginning, though, when the vision is outpacing the users, and the vision is outpacing the funders. And
there was a point in our company where we basically had one more payroll, and then it was done because the market had crashed. I think this was 2008. The market had crashed. We had an investment term sheet on the table that we'd agreed on. We'd stopped talking to all other investors. The person who was going to give us money was suddenly no longer liquid because of the market crash. So he had to pull out when we just didn't have enough ramp to keep going. And there are some pretty tough times and some pretty close calls, even for a company that looks like it's been successful the whole way through. For us, the only reason we're still in business is that in the middle of the night, Phil was looking at the finances and trying to figure out what day that month he would have to lay everybody off, and he got an email out of the blue from someone in Scandinavia who said, "I really like your company, and just curious, are you looking for investments?" And Phil replied and said, "Well, yes, I am." They went back and forth. This turned out to be a fairly large tech investor in Europe, and he gave us a few $100,000 investment at a real early stage of the company. That got us through that global economic crisis to actually make it to the point where we could get a larger institutional investment, and then we were able to keep going from there.
He was a believer and a user, not someone you had pitched.
Exactly, and I think that's like I said, we've by building something that we actually would want to use, and we would actually be proud to have people that we know use it, and not being cynically chasing some sort of abstract market. That has reflected itself in the products we've built. Like we make something that I wouldn't claim that anything we've built is perfect. We obviously keep trying a bunch of crazy stuff, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. But building something that establishes the right long-term relationship with our users translates into dividends over very, very long time cycles. It translates into investors being interested, into journalists being interested in the product, and it translates eventually into users paying for the product, because we have a free service that's actually pretty fully functioned, and we choose to let people use that for as long as they want. There's nothing that forces you. There's no ransomware where after 6 months it says you can't use it anymore. We let you use it for free, and eventually you pay us, and that means we have to do the right things for our users over months and years in order to make sure that once they get enough value into Evernote, they will start paying us for it.
Because their target customer was everyone, and because they were trying to be the place where you could remember everything, Evernote continued to make big investments that weren't likely to pay off in the short term. They were investing in international markets early on. Evernote is hugely popular in Japan and other Asian markets, for instance. They launched a physical goods marketplace, selling custom products directly and through partners. The founding team of Evernote had built and exited a couple of startups together, but this time it was different.
Companies that optimize on a really quick exit, like I've got a business plan and 6 months from now I'm going to flip this to Twitter or something like that. Like once in a while that succeeds, but fundamentally I don't think that sort of mindset going in, you are just very unlikely to build something of lasting value because you are going to be cutting corners. You are going to be making decisions that go against the long-term interests of your users and your customers. We've always had a very, very long time horizon in every way that we think, which means...
So how long? Wait, is that a number?
Phil talks about us being a 100-year company. So I guess we launched the service publicly in 2008, so we're 6 years into the 100-year mission.
Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. I probably won't be around at the end, but we'll see. Yes, that's like obviously a little bit cute to be talking about a 100-year mission, but on the other hand, like we want our employees to think on that time frame, both in what they're building in the product, like make decisions today where like there isn't something that like a landmine sitting out there 4 years from now, which like, 4 years from now, it's probably not going to be my problem. Like build everything as if it is going to be your problem.
So this is worth lingering on. And how many technology companies are built to be flipped, built to be somebody else's problem? Maybe more than anything, this commitment by Evernote defines what makes the company worth betting on.
And it also means that we want our employees to feel like they can work here for years and years and years. I think that we want to do the right things for HR and benefits and just general company culture so that our employees can feel like this is a manageable marathon and not a crazy sprint. And that's a little bit tough because I think in the Valley there's a little bit of a love of kind of quickie one-off like hackathons. This person was a sophomore last year and now they just flipped their company to.
Those are the people who get celebrated, right? Yeah,
which is fine. Like don't begrudge any of them their successes, but I think it's really hard to approach building something of lasting value with that kind of a mindset that it's temporary, that it's you're just holding it together long enough to dump it on someone else. Like you don't see that.
Coming up, we'll talk with Dave about how Evernote makes money. It's not obvious when we're all trained to expect applications for free. We'll also talk about Evernote's partnership with that proudly analog brand, Moleskine.
You're listening to PJ Radio's The Unconventionals. If you'd like to learn more about the show or join in on the conversation, check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/unconventionalsradio. Our academic sponsor for The Unconventionals is a Center on Global Brand Leadership at Columbia Business School, which turns the research of academia's foremost thinkers on branding into practical tools and insight for real-world application. For more information, visit globalbrands.org.
Welcome back. This is Mike O'Toole, and you're listening to The Unconventionals. I'm talking with Dave Engberg, Chief Technology Officer of Evernote. We talked about Evernote's revenue model. It wasn't ad-driven, so users would need to pay. Dave compared what is happening to productivity tools to how gaming has changed. It used to be that computer gaming required a big piece of hardware and $50 per game. Now it's much more about social gaming and mobile gaming. This has broadened the audience, but also meant for more casual interactions. Productivity applications have followed the same arc. People used to spend $400 on software, think Microsoft Office. Now people access tools for free or pay a few dollars a month. This has grown the productivity market by a factor of 10, but also upended the formula for making money.
Yeah, we did the quote-unquote freemium business model where the application is free for use. You use it for as long as you like, but there's additional value you get by paying us and paying us a not particularly large amount of money, like $5 a month. That business model for productivity software was relatively new, but it lets us basically be our own competition. Like the competitor to our premium product is our free product. There is no air left in the market for another vendor because there's nobody who is going to be able to take their product and make it available for less than free. So by making a high quality free application, we are both the low end and the higher end of the market of one. I think that there's other folks who obviously noticed what we were doing and are moving into that realm, but they tend to be coming from a direction that is less likely to be emphasizing the needs of the user. You're taking a desktop application and trying to convert it into a mobile experience. It's hard. I think you have to be thinking about mobile. You have to be thinking about people on the go. You have to be thinking about people who don't even have a home computer in order to design for that well. And building a really great user interface design team is hard, and we've spent a lot of time on it, and we think we've assembled a pretty good crew of people here.
Why do people upgrade? Why do people pay for the service?
Yeah, we've done various surveys. We've asked people like, okay, did you upgrade so that you could put bigger notes into Evernote, so that you could use our premium support chat, things like that. Generally, like each of those has some people who did it. There's some people who said that each of those was the reason. But the number one thing across the board for each person that we found is that people pay for Evernote because they just like Evernote and they want to support it. They want to support the company.
Well, that sounds like public radio.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we're trying to avoid doing pledge drives. I think that's that'd be a rough.
Because people pay for utility, right? They pay for features and functionality.
Right. But I guess once you start using Evernote, on the first day you use Evernote, you've got nothing of yours in there, and it's just this blank slate. And it doesn't really have a huge amount of value to you. Let's say you've been using it for a month. You've got 12 recipes and some database queries and some things you clip from the web. And if I were to ask you, how much money would I have to pay you to just delete all your Evernote data? Like, you might stop and say, I don't know, like $20? Like, if you give me $20, I'd be willing to let you do that. A year later, you might have a huge portion of your life. And if I were to go to you and ask you, like, how much could I pay you to just delete all of your Evernote data? Like, the number just keeps going up. You'd say, I don't know, $1,000 would maybe make me whole if you were to do that. And the secret to Evernote is that it gets more valuable over time because you make it more valuable. Like, we just want to be a tool that lets you make Evernote more valuable for yourself. It almost sounds kind of nefarious that we basically try to just get out of your way and let you build value. There's a lot of things in computing that don't have that kind of a curve, that don't get more valuable over time. They get less valuable.
Absolutely. It feels like it's the opposite. You use something in the beginning because it's novel or interesting, but then you lose that luster and then you move on to the next thing. I mean, that's the story of a lot of apps, right? You use them once or twice or a couple dozen times and then you're done.
Right. So movies and books and music and video games, like all of those, the value declines over time. So those don't tend to work with a freemium business model. Like you can't really have a freemium book. But with Evernote, we're one of the small percent of applications that I think it really works for, where we can let you use it as long as you want for free, because you will build up enough value that at some point in your life, you will get Evernote to a point that it is a very important part to how you manage your life and how you get your work done. And therefore, you're willing to pay us a not particularly significant amount of money to make that slightly better and to support the company.
Does your data support that? So with most apps, people download them and then their use declines. Right?
Yeah.
People use them in the beginning. I think of hundreds of apps that I've downloaded that I've used once or twice.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're saying people download it and they find it more useful over time. Is that what the data shows?
Yeah. So in the first couple of months, there's a pretty steep drop off. The fact that you can go in the App Store and install 12 different applications in one sitting and then just click on each of them, and like you can make a snap decision whether you even want to continue after the first 5 seconds. So in the first 2 months, there's a pretty large drop off of, let's say, 75%. That's not bad for the industry. It's actually pretty good, but it's normal for a free application. After that couple months, the usage is basically permanent. Like you stick around for a couple months and then you pretty much stay around forever.
That's pretty good curve for your business.
Yeah. I think our curves have been very favorable. I think we've been lucky to find something that like sustains value and actually increases value over time. So that each month we pull in, like every second we're adding another person to Evernote, and if 25% of those stay around long term, that ends up with a lot of people. And if what we found is that each month that you stay with Evernote, you are more and more likely to decide to pay us. So in your first month, it's about a 0.5% likelihood that you will start paying us in your first month. So 1 out of 200 people. By the end of the first year, it's like 5 or 6% chance. By the end of the second year, it's like 8, 9, 10% chance. As far as we can tell, it just keeps going up over time. The longer you stay with us, and everybody, like most people stay with us after the second month. They just stay around forever. The longer you stay, the more likely you are to pay, which rhymes. So that's useful.
Dave is describing Evernote's smile curve, and it's a customer adoption curve every internet business would love to have. Usage is high at the beginning when people download the app, then drops off, but then the curve comes back up as people find value. A big part of why the curve trends up is Evernote has a big tent philosophy about integrating different parts of your life. In particular, I find it useful for connecting the analog to the digital. We hold on to some old-fashioned ways of working, like sitting in a room together and writing on a whiteboard, because they're effective. Evernote understands this and doesn't try to force us into purely digital ways of working or remembering. We also love our notebooks. Print, as David Carr of the New York Times said earlier this year, continues to be a remarkable technology. I asked Dave to talk about their collaboration with Moleskine. Moleskine has been around for 200 years, and the notebooks have been used by Van Gogh and Picasso and Hemingway.
There was some website, I can't remember which one, that was doing some sort of bake-off survey about what note-taking memory application you use. And there was Evernote, and there was OneNote, and there was some other players, and there was Paper. And we came in second to Paper. People, as much as we've tried, I have a paper notebook on my desk open all the time, and we eventually had to realize that having a vision that was unrealistic with reality wasn't actually benefiting the company. And what we really needed to do was figure out like how you could work most productively, even if that doesn't involve you touching our application all the time. So the Moleskine Collaboration is a great example of that, where you can take one of these Moleskine notebooks, you write in it, and when you take a picture of it with the Evernote application to put that page into Evernote, we can detect lots of things about that page to make it extremely crisp, get the recognition of your handwriting to be much better. If there's a curve in the page, when the camera is doing it at an angle with some bad lighting, we're able to smooth that all out, get it all perfectly rectangular, and get it into Evernote with the right annotations to make it even more productive for you. And having that collaboration with Moleskine, where they include a year of Evernote Premium with the notebook, and then we make the application handle that images of their pages even better. Getting that to be really seamless kind of helps to demonstrate that the days of one monolithic application where you do everything is gone. Now applications are interacting with physical items. They're interacting with wearable devices, and an application is becoming something much more abstract. It is a way of getting things done as opposed to just like a piece of software.
And in some ways, getting things done the old ways are still how we prefer to do them, right? So
Sure.
Writing on a whiteboard or drawing an infographic on a whiteboard just feels more natural, and it's a better way to collaborate. But the fact that you can take a picture of that output and bring it into Evernote is another example of that.
Exactly. And we want to make the things that you're doing in the real world, we want to make them more useful to you than if you weren't using Evernote. So searching for text in a notebook, like if I were a prolific note taker in Moleskine notebooks, and I've gone through 3 notebooks and I've got 1,000 pages of notes, and I want to find the one note page where I happen to mention your name, like being able to search in a search box, just as easy as I'm searching Google, I can search through my notebooks and it'll bring up exactly the right page with your name highlighted. And that just makes the physical act of writing on a notebook more useful without actually detracting from the ergonomics, the fact that I can do it in a place where I don't have any electricity. I can do it casually while standing around at a bus stop. Like that's you get all the benefits of paper while also having it all the benefits of the digital world.
Thanks to Dave Engberg of Evernote for his time, thoughts, and great hospitality at Evernote's headquarters in Redwood City. Next time on The Unconventionals, we'll talk to John Pepper, founder of Boloco, the burrito chain that competed not just on its food, but on how it paid its workers. Not exactly textbook fast food strategy. This is Mike O'Toole for The Unconventionals.
The Unconventionals is written and produced by Mike O'Toole and Reed Mangan. Post-production and technical direction by Reed Mangan with Emmanuel Ording and Anthony Gentles. Promotion and social strategy by Greg Strafface and Graham Spector with Tori O'Neill. Our creative director is Aaron De Silva. Our executive producer is Phil Johnson for PJA Advertising and Marketing. I'm Jafia Leahy. To hear more episodes of The Unconventionals, visit pjaradio.com.
This is PJA Radio.